first time Ethan saw her, she looked like a shadow trapped in daylight, frozen on the corner of a quiet suburban street in Redwood Hills, gripping her trembling hands as if the world had suddenly gone cold. It was early morning, the kind where the sun stretches awake slowly, casting long, gentle rays across the pavement. Yet nothing about the woman standing alone seemed gentle. Her eyes darted nervously, her breathing uneven, as though she was bracing herself for something that wasn't there. Ethan wasn't even sure what made him stop. Maybe the way fear clung to her, or maybe the instinctive tug of something inside him whispering that this moment mattered. But before he could process what he was seeing, his 6-year-old daughter, Sofia, squeezed his hand softly and looked up at him with wide, innocent concern. And in the softest voice, she asked, "Daddy, can we help her feel safe? If you believe in kindness, compassion, and second chances, please remember to like, comment, share, and subscribe. It truly helps us keep telling stories that matter." Ethan hadn't expected a simple walk to the neighborhood park to turn into something that felt like a door opening. The woman's name, he would later learn, was Hannah. But in that moment, she was simply a stranger with fear lodged so deeply in her expression that it echoed in Ethan's own chest. Sofia tugged again, and Ethan knelt beside her, brushing a strand of hair away from her face. He admired his daughter's heart. How quickly she noticed hurt, how instinctively she reached for it. She reminded him so much of her mother, Claire, who approached life with a quiet grace that made people feel seen. When they approached the woman, Ethan kept his voice gentle. He didn't want to startle her, but the moment she turned toward him, he saw the unmistakable shimmer of unshed tears. She apologized before he even said a word, telling them she didn't mean to worry anyone, that she was fine, really, just waiting for someone. But even as she spoke, her voice cracked around the edges of something heavier. Ethan sensed struggle. Not the obvious kind, but the quiet kind that hides beneath polite smiles and practiced reassurances. Sofia stepped forward, her small hand reaching out, and for a moment, something in Hannah's rigid posture softened. It was subtle, like a shift in the wind, but Ethan saw it. They learned she had recently moved to the area after leaving a difficult situation in another state. Though she didn't offer details, her tone suggested pain she wasn't ready to name. She'd been staying with a distant relative who worked long hours, and she had no friends in the city, no real support system, and no sense of safety yet. That morning, she tried to walk to a nearby store but became overwhelmed by unfamiliar streets, unfamiliar sounds, and unfamiliar memories that came rushing back when she least expected them. Claire joined them moments later, walking briskly after noticing Ethan and Sofia had stopped. When she reached Hannah, there was immediate recognition, not of who she was, but of what she was feeling. Claire had always been able to read people like open books. They spent the next few minutes just standing with her. No pressure, no questions, just presence. And sometimes presence is the first step toward peace. Over the following days, life moved with an unexpected pull. Hannah remained on Ethan's mind, and Claire suggested they check in on her. Not in a way that overwhelmed, but in small steps. A homemade meal dropped off, a brief chat on the sidewalk, an invitation for a walk with Sofia, who quickly decided Hannah was one of her favorite grown-ups. The neighborhood around them was calm. Tree-lined streets, quiet homes, and gentle breezes that carried the scent of pine. But inside Hannah, storms were still settling. She confessed she suffered from anxiety after years of instability, and though she was safe now, her mind hadn't caught up. The Trentons, the family who opened their hearts to her, became a steadying presence she didn't know she needed. Ethan would tell her about local trails, Claire would bring her herbal teas she swore by, and Sofia would draw her pictures that Hannah kept tucked inside her notebook like tiny miracles. Hannah began opening up in pieces, like a puzzle she was slowly willing to share. She talked about how she had spent years believing she was a burden, how she'd grown accustomed to tiptoeing through life, and how fear had become her constant companion. And Ethan listened. Claire listened. Sometimes listening is the purest form of love. But healing isn't linear, and there were days Hannah didn't leave her room. Days when she felt like she'd never be whole. Days when walking down the street triggered old echoes of voices she worked so hard to forget. One evening, after a particularly difficult day, she knocked on the Trentons' door. Her eyes were swollen, her voice shaky, and she apologized repeatedly for bothering them. But Claire pulled her into a warm embrace that silenced every apology. Hannah admitted she felt alone again, as though the shadows from her past were creeping back. Ethan invited her to sit on the back porch, where string lights glowed softly and fireflies drifted lazily across the yard. Sofia curled up beside Hannah, resting her head on her arm as though she'd known her forever. And in that simple gathering, the cool air, the soft lights, the quiet hum of safety, Hannah felt something shift again. Not dramatically, not suddenly, but tenderly. She realized that healing didn't always come from grand gestures. Sometimes it came from being seen by the right people at the right time. Weeks passed, and Hannah grew steadier. She found a part-time job at a small cafe. She started journaling again. She learned the streets of Redwood Hills well enough to walk them without panic. She even laughed, genuinely laughed, one afternoon when Sofia convinced her to chase her through the sprinklers in their backyard. One day, standing on that same corner where they had first seen her trembling and afraid, Hannah looked at Ethan and Claire and said that meeting them had been her turning point. She said she had been lost, not just physically, but emotionally. And then she glanced at Sofia, who beamed up at her as though she'd been waiting for this moment. Sofia reminded everyone that sometimes the smallest hearts ask the biggest questions, like, "Daddy, can we help her feel safe?" And sometimes those questions end up saving more than one person. And Hannah, with a deep breath and a steady smile, finally felt like she belonged somewhere again. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. Your support helps these stories reach more people who need them. Before you go, comment below. What small act of kindness changed your life?